close out with 6 and 7 as we close out here. We won't belabor the point. Number 6, this is another one that's become popular with some people nowadays. But again, they say they want to do a dark county work. Presumptive help. Number 6, dark county work or pioneer work. Because they want to go and find some place where no one is and they're going to do a work. I call it the justifications of Jonah. The justifications of Jonah. Now, didn't Jonah get a call from God to do a work? It was a city work, right?
City work.
The great work for that time was in the cities. But, Jonah had a different idea. He was going to do a work someplace else. He wanted to still do the work. And he wanted to be on the ship. But was it the right ship?
Going in the wrong direction.
So could we be on the ship but on the wrong ship?
That's right. And moving in the wrong direction.
And when the storms come up, the only thing that could really solve the issue is to throw you overboard?
That's it.
Could it be that some people need to be thrown overboard? Brothers and sisters, when we look at this idea, the justifications of Jonah is summed up in the sense that many people, even though there needs to be dark county work or pioneering work or work where no one is, no church is, but how practical is that for the average believer to do dark county work and to go 200 miles away from where he is and do work? Most people live in the cities. How's that going to affect their children? I mean, can someone with children do it? I mean, it's not necessarily something that everyone can do, number one. Number two, when we look at the idea of a dark county work, again, people want to do it in the context of asking the conference to do it or getting some support from the conference. The dark county work that I think people need to focus is the fact that the work in the cities has stopped. And some of our cities with Adventist so-called churches are just as dark as anywhere you might go because the three dimensions are not being presented, the testing truth is not being presented, the reform is not being presented. How dark could these areas be with all these different buildings? But people, again, with the wrong concept of how, as a prisoner of hope, these institutions will be brought back, they will see themselves as needing to and having to find some way to finish the work. And when the churches and where they are become too odious and they don't want to seem as if they're leaving the church, they resign themselves, well, you know what, I can't leave the church, because doing self-supporting work is leaving the church to them. Starting a ministry or a place where people can come and hear the truth in the city, that's leaving the church to them because they have a wrong concept. So they have to find some way, and they resign, some small number, but they resign themselves to doing a dark county work, going where there is no church. We tried that in Sacramento, California. We went to a place where there was no church.
That's right.
That part of town, there was no church. And like I said, the samurai sword came in and, that church, that thing was destroyed.
And
that we need to figure it out. Thank you. Mike, too?
Yes, Mr. Chairman. I want to make 2 key points here, and they both relate to the overall expense of having workers in the front line of the field. And I want to just focus first on the question of ERI. ERI, I know we work with outside entities to help us calculate this, but they directly often are connected. The majority, if you look at the ERI calculations, are connected to housing expense. And this is a real challenge in the stated mission objectives we have with, for example, Antioch and reaching New York, Boston, LA, San Francisco. Because what is happening over and over again in these situations is that we are placing our pastors, those who need to be incarnationally working, the workers are living outside of these cities. And as I look at the example of Jesus, Jesus did not camp on the moon and come and save us on the weekends. He lived amongst us.
Right.
And this really hits on this question of dollars. Just to give you an example, just give me 1 more minute. In Boston, we need, that's our big city, 5-6 million people. For me to pay the ERI, I'm going to have to spend $4,000 more per employee for them to live where the gospel needs to go. But yet, I'm not paying ERI almost across the board. And so I think that's the first thing we need to ask ourselves. Should we maybe be looking at this from a missional standpoint and say, these cities which have the majority of our American and Canadian population, do we need to create some other funding mechanism to help our workers live where the people are? If not, I've got pastors commuting an hour and a half to get to their districts. I mean, our pastors need to know the baristas and the barbers, and they need to know the grocers. They need to be in the community. But how can they do that when we're not even, most conferences are not even paying ERI? Interestingly enough, in this process, though, if you take a look, and this is, I'm just throwing this out there just for us to consider. It's not a negative. It's how do we allocate these funds? Most of the unions that I'm aware of and divisions in the General Conference are paying 100% ERI. But our friends in Hawaii are at 25%. We're doing better, 65% or so. So the question is, how do we fund mission in these big cities that are our greatest mission focus as a division?